right, so back to the rest of our calendar here. Mr. Drury, Ms. Mysak, why don't we take your matter up? Ms. Sundvik, Mr. Siller or Seiler, I'm going to find out how I should pronounce your name. And Mr. Seiler, is it Seiler or Siller?
It's Mr. Siller, Your Honor.
Siller, okay. All right, and then Mr. Drury, you're back with your client, Sundvik, and we're here on case 22-322. And let me just get all my documents up and available. Just re-familiarizing myself after preparing the other day. Okay, so Mr. Drury, Ms. Mysak, then this is all about the Sundvik's petition. Temporary order was issued against Mr. Siller, and I've had the opportunity to look at, let's see, the last thing that was filed was Mr. Siller filed things around December 30th, that supplemental, a declaration, also by a brother or a family member, I believe it was. And petitioner's call log, petition, yep, I've gotten a look at both sides have put forward exhibits. So if in the discussions here today, if you want me to look particularly again at an exhibit, just help me out, tell me where to look. But I've got those that I reviewed previously too. So let me put everyone under oath. Ms. Sundvik, just in case you testify, I'm gonna have you raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, Ms. Sundvik?
Yes, I do, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Siller, if you'd raise your right hand as well, if you testify, I'll need you under oath. So do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, Mr. Siller?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thanks. And then I'm just going to turn to the attorneys and they're going to kind of run their show and decide what evidence they present or not. But so, Mr. Drury, your burden today on your client's request for this order to go beyond today. There you go. Mr. Drury, you're on.
Thank you, Your Honor. And we do have a witness, Ariel Thomas. Does the court want to swear her in now and put her in a breakout room, or does the court?
Yeah, let me put Ms. Thomas. I didn't realize that she was a witness, but now I know. Okay, Ms. Thomas, let me put you under oath now so I don't forget to do that. And then what we're going to do is put you in a what we call a breakout room. You won't be able to hear the proceedings, and when we need you, we'll bring you back in. All right, so you're not to come back in to the court physically or by Zoom or in any way until we bring you back in. All right. Okay, I see a nodding, but I need you to answer out loud.
Yes, yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so raise your right hand with me. Ms. Thomas, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. So now you'll get an invitation to a breakout room, accept that, and then that's just where you'll be. And you can do whatever you need to do until we need you. Don't go too far.
Thank you.
All right. Any witnesses, Ms. Mysak, I should know about? I didn't see anyone else.
No witnesses, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. So Mr. Drury, let me turn back to you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, if I could take testimony from my client just briefly.
Okay. So Ms. Sundvik, I'll have Mr. Drury pose questions.
And Ms. Sundvik, do you know the respondent, Jacob Siller?
Yes, I do.
And just so you know, can the court hear her okay at this point? Or?
Just keep going. It was a little soft.
A little soft. Okay, just make sure to vocalize or get closer. So, and how do you know Mr. Siller?
I met him through work and then ended up in a relationship with Mr. Siller.
Yeah, I'm not able to get enough of a reading from your client. I don't know if your microphone can move or something, or you swap spots, or I don't know.
I could swap spots.
That's just a thought. So I'm presuming the microphone is attached or part of your laptop or your, yeah, maybe that's the way. Okay, let's try it again and see how we do now.
And you mentioned a relationship with Mr. Siller. Was that like a romantic relationship?
Yes, it was.
Is that better, Your Honor?
That is better, thanks. And Mr. Siller, Ms. Mysak, you're good? Hearing, thumbs up? Okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
Good. Go ahead.
And where did you guys work at the same place?
Yes, we did.
Where was that?
Harbor Freight Tools.
And what was your position there?
I was a part-time associate.
And when did you take that job?
I got the job late May of 2022.
And you mentioned Mr. Siller. It sounds like he worked there as well.
Yes, he was my sales supervisor.
Was he in a position of authority for you at work?
Yes, he was.
And did he work there before you?
Yes, I don't remember how long he was at the company before I got there, but he had been working there a while.
And did he, I mean, as far as your role there, did he train you for your role or serve any role through you at work?
He did train me on cashier, and when he was the only leadership, he was my supervisor for the day.
Okay. Were romantic relationships at work allowed as far as you know?
Not when it comes to associate to leadership. They are not allowed.
And I want to get directly into your petition. Are you still together with Mr. Siller?
No, we are not.
All right. And why is that?
We broke up mid-November. We were in a not good relationship, and it ended up getting a bit abusive. So our relationship did take an end.
Okay. And when you say a bit abusive, do you know the specific day that you would say you guys called it off?
It was the 14th of November, 2022.
Did anything happen that day that impacted your relationship with Mr. Siller, or was abusive?
The day that we broke up, I went to grab my stuff. He had told me to come grab my things. I had went to the closet to start grabbing my clothes that were hung up in the closet. He aggressively grabbed the collar of my shirt and pushed me against a wall and was trying to talk it out. I told him I did not want to talk about it. I just wanted to get my stuff and leave. He would not let me, and then I just ended up leaving without my stuff. He walked me down, I guess you could say, to my car. I did not want him to. And then he proceeded to stand in front of my driver's side door, not letting me leave for about 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay. Were you eventually able to leave that day?
Yes, he did end up going inside. I did get to leave. I began driving home. I ended up wanting to go on a drive just to clear my head. And then Mr. Siller began calling me over and over and over again, just demanding some of the stuff that I had that was his, and demanding we talk about it, and then proceeded to threaten me and threaten to break down my door and to take his stuff himself.
What specifically did he want, and what items did he want?
On closer to Halloween, we had gone to a EDM rave event. He had bought me a blanket that I wanted as a gift. And he had told me that if we broke up, in order to get my stuff back, I would have to give him back the blanket that he had bought me. I had agreed that I would bring him the blanket the next day. I wanted to bring someone with me. I didn't want to do it alone. I did not want to be alone with Mr. Siller again. And he just would not take that as an no as an answer. He wanted the blanket right then and there that night.
Now, we've submitted this paperwork here, you know, I can probably show you as a call log.
Okay, let
There's
me
one
go
of-
look at, there. Come on. I'm looking at another screen here as everything's electronic. So the petitioner's call log, that's what we're looking at right now. And okay. And
And
you're
it
with us,
should
Mr.
have like a
Isaac?
green 1021 at the top, just to make sure we're. And
Yes,
I want
that's
to
what I've
hand
got.
you that call log. Can you tell me what that is, Ms. Dunvik?
This is a photo of my call log on my phone from all the times that Jacob had called me the night of the 14th.
And did you take that picture yourself?
Yes, I went back and took a screenshot of the image.
And I showed some of the, it just says Jacob there, and then says FaceTime videos. Typically, is that, can you explain what that is?
Yes, so on iPhone, there's an ability to use FaceTime video where you can video chat to people. We would do either FaceTime video or just normal calls when calling each other.
And I note that some are white and some are red. What does that indicate?
The white ones are all the ones that I had answered, and then the red ones are ones that I didn't answer. As you can see, there's some that are a burst of 26 calls all at the same time that I did not answer any of them. The ones that I did answer, as you see, it's kind of sporadic throughout the call log. I was telling him to stop calling me and to please leave me alone. I just wanted space. I didn't want to talk to him. And it's one of the last calls that I did answer that he had threatened to kick in my door, and I proceeded to not answer any more phone calls after that.
That threat to kick in your door, did you believe that threat?
Yes, I did. I immediately turned around and immediately started driving back home.
Do you live within, like, where were you going when you say home?
I live with my father.
Okay. Now, is the 14th the last time that you communicated with Mr. Siller?
No, so I believe it was the 16th of November, 2 days later. I had not blocked him on Facebook Messenger yet, so he proceeded to call me on that about 10 or so times. I don't have the call log of that one. And he was claiming that he was at a mental hospital or something and he needed a ride. It was like 1 a.m. I just told him, stop calling me. Like, I'm not gonna go pick you up. Just leave me alone.
Do you know if he was in fact in a mental hospital?
I do not know for sure, no.
But did you not go to pick him up or go anywhere to see him?
No, I proceeded to block him on Facebook and everything else I had him on after that.
Okay. Now you mentioned this incident on the 14th. Is that the first time that is that the only time, I should say, that Mr. Siller was abusive towards you?
No, it was not.
Can you explain or describe another incident from your memory?
There was an incident on September 22nd. I was going over to Mr. Siller's house. We were planning on going to the Washington State Fair that day. We ended up getting into a small argument. I don't remember what started the argument, but we got into an argument. I ended up just being like, I'm just gonna go home. I'm gonna leave. I was standing, the door was behind me and I was standing in front of the door. And then in front of me is this kitchen table where my purse and my keys were sitting on the table. And Jacob was standing in between me and the table. I just wanted to get my purse and my keys so I could leave. He was not letting me get past him. I tried to just kind of scooch by him, and he really aggressively put one hand in the front of my throat and the other in the back and proceeded to crush my throat very aggressively. He was yelling at me during this altercation, and I was hearing his voice start to fade away as if I was slowly losing consciousness in a way. I did not end up I did not lose consciousness, but I did lose some feeling in my arm and in my leg. And I did feel a bit out of it for a second after he did end up releasing me.
Now, how did you get away, or how did that incident stop?
I was very much in shock after the incident has happened. I have never been in a situation like that. It was very scary and surreal. I ended up having a minor panic attack because of the incident. I didn't really know what to do. Mr. Siller would not let me leave his house. He forced me to sit down at his dining room table with him and wouldn't let me leave until I calmed down because he was scared that I was going to go to the cops and get him arrested. I was too scared to do so at the time, so I never called the police and I never called anyone the day of the incident. We ended up just going to the fair, and he spent a bunch of money on me, and as just to make me feel better, I guess.
I apologize, John. So you guys did go to the fair that day?
Yes, we did go to the fair that day.
Now, did you guys ever talk about this incident or bring it up? You mentioned this was back in September 22nd, I believe. That other incident you mentioned was not until November 14th. So you guys, were you still an item over that period of time?
Yes, we were.
Did you guys talk about that incident at all while you were a couple?
There was a few times it was brought up. Mr. Siller always brushed it under the rug and acted as if it wasn't that big of a deal. I always tried to just let him know that it was very serious to me. It really bothered me, and I still think about it a lot to this day. It still sticks with me. It's just really terrifying. I didn't like the experience that I had to go through.
Is that as far as choking or blockage of an airway, is that the only time that that's happened in your relationship?
There was one other time that he had
So
put me into
let me
a
stop you
choke.
there, Mr. Drury. And it's fine if Ms. Mysak and Mr. Siller don't, but I'm wondering when they turn off their cameras, I'm not sure if they're still with us in the hearing, so I need to know that.
Sorry, Your Honor, I had
So-
a brief lapse in Wi-Fi back.
Okay.
I don't think I
so,
missed anything.
That's okay. Well, I'll always kind of look for that and make sure that you're still with us as if you're here in court. So you need to, other than collapses and Wi-Fi's, please keep the cameras on and stay with us, both Mr. Siller and Ms. Mysak. So, all right, going back to Mr. Drury, in your case, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. And I'll just reiterate that last question. As you mentioned an incident of choking on September 22nd or restriction of an airway. Is that the only time in your relationship that happened with Mr. Siller?
There was another time, I don't remember the exact date of this one. He had put me into a chokehold. We were kind of just hanging out at his house. He was tickling my legs. My legs were twitching and it kind of impulse kicking because that's how my body was reacting to it. I had warned him that I may accidentally kick him. I did accidentally kick him about right here. And I immediately apologized, but he also immediately ran around the bed and put me into a chokehold. My arm actually got stuck up in the chokehold and squeezed my arm very bad to where my arm was sore for the rest of the day.
How long did that chokehold last?
That one, I believe, only 10 to 15 seconds. He wasn't really restricting my airways, but he did put me in a dramatic chokehold.
Now, you mentioned that you guys were kind of tickle fighting. Is it possible that during that incident that Mr. Siller was just being playful or playing along?
No, he was immediately he has very particular anger where all of a sudden his whole demeanor will change in a snap, and all of a sudden he was just extremely angry and just immediately put me in a chokehold. I immediately started crying after the incident.
Were there any injuries to any of these, like physical injuries to on any of these two incidences with restriction of airway?
No marks were ever left. There wasn't anything really left over from it. Just the choking one, I had a sore throat, and then the choke hold, my arm was sore.
And you mentioned in your petition damage to your car. Not to skip around, but can you explain what you mean by that?
Yes, we had planned a trip to Oregon. We were planning to go to the zoo and look at a flower garden. Mr. Siller did not tell me how he was unhappy with what I was wearing that day. Instead, just kind of held it in until we were already in Oregon and proceeded to get very angry with me about what I was wearing and calling me disrespectful for what I was wearing. I decided that I was just going to begin driving home because I don't want to be in Oregon with someone who's making me feel like shit about myself. And so I began driving home. This made Mr. Siller very angry. He was acting as if I had just wasted his time and wasted his day. We drove all the way to Oregon for nothing. And he proceeded to get very angry and start violently punching the dash of my car in front of the passenger seat. And he did this in 2 bursts. He did it in 1 burst of just punching it over and over and over again. And then he kind of stopped for a minute and then did it again, as well as just kind of screaming at me. After this, I was kind of just over it, and I was just trying to tune him out. I was just kind of like, I was just making funny noises, like no, like just stop talking, basically just trying to get him to be quiet. And that was just making him more angry, and he ended up threatening to punch me in my jaw.
And that threat to punch you in the jaw, in that situation, did you believe that threat to be credible?
Yes, I did. He wanted me to shut up. He had threatened to punch me in the jaw because of what I was saying, and so I immediately decided to just be quiet.
Now, was there any damage to your car from that incident?
Yes, there was obvious marks from where he had punched my dash very aggressively.
And did you take video of that damage?
I did take a video of the damage to my car. I took a video like 2 days after it, or the night of. I can't remember the exact day. I took a video of it.
Okay. And did you submit that video to the court?
Yes, I did.
Going to back around the day when you guys, I guess, when would you say you officially were no longer an item or no longer in a intimate relationship with Mr. Siller? Is there a specific day?
November 14th, 2022.
Did you guys, but you've been working together at that time. Did you guys still work together at that time?
Yes, we did still work together.
Okay. And how was it going to work with Mr. Siller? Had things changed after that last incident?
So my first day back at work, with us not being in a relationship anymore, I was planning on just staying away from Mr. Siller as much as possible. There were other leadership there. I did not have to fully take authority to just Mr. Siller. He is on sales side. I'm on logistics, so he is not technically my supervisor if there's a logistics supervisor there. And so I was just trying to avoid him and help. We were resetting some of the tables and fixing things up, so I was just trying to help with them. Mr. Siller just would continuously follow me around. He was not leaving me alone. I was very visibly, I didn't want him near me. I just wanted to be civil and just work around it and not have to deal with it. He was very persistent. He ended up just following me around and would touch me inappropriately at work. I was very uncomfortable with it. I ended up telling a few people. I told Ariel that I was very uncomfortable, my coworker, because I was just so uncomfortable. I didn't know what to do. No one at work had known at this point, so I couldn't have made a scene about it. I didn't feel comfortable doing that.
And well, it sounds like you were speaking to Ariel. Is that somebody that you work with?
Yes.
As far as at work, did she know about this stuff at that time?
Yes, Ariel was aware of mine and Mr. Siller's relationship at this point.
But nobody else.
There was one other coworker as well. His name is Kevin Houston.
At any point, did you report this relationship to management?
The first day that I reported it to management is the day that I went to get the restraining order, and I was approved for the temporary and was waiting for for Mr. Siller to be served. I went up to my boss, the store manager, and just told him the whole situation, and I just didn't know what to do.
Okay. Are you still at that same company?
Yes, I am.
And at the same location?
Yes.
Is Mr. Siller at that location anymore?
No, he is
not. You mentioned as well in your petition threats to kill. Did those occur during your relationship with Mr. Siller?
Yes, there would be multiple occasions where if there was anything that made him think that I was going to leave him, he would threaten to kill me, that I wasn't allowed to leave him. There was other times where if there was a talk about potentially me being pregnant, and if I aborted the child, he would kill me. There's just a lot of different things. He had also threatened to, if I had gotten him fired, that he threatened to beat up a bunch of people at work and make my life hell, in his words.
Considering Mr. Siller's physical size compared to you, are you able to defend yourself physically against Mr. Siller?
No, I am not. And Mr. Siller had proven to me on multiple occasions that he could physically easily overpower me. He practices at a boxing ring. Not a boxing ring, a fighting place. I don't remember the exact name of it, but he practices fighting, and he's a lot more stronger than me. I'm a small girl. I'm only 5'3". I weigh 120 pounds. I'm a very easy person to overpower, and Mr. Siller is a very strong man. I do not feel safe around him.
And those threats to kill, when they were given, did you believe those threats?
Yes, I did.
Since that temporary order was entered, have you had any contact from Mr. Siller that you're aware of?
I have not had any contact.
Okay. Have you reported to law enforcement any of these incidences that you've described?
I had went to report it to law enforcement about 2 weeks ago. I had called, I had spoken with an officer to go in and write a statement. The day I went in to go write the statement, the officer was not in at that point. I asked if I could just write the statement to leave. They didn't really know how to help me, so they gave me the officer's email. I never got around to reaching out. The officer did tell me that there wasn't a likelihood of charges coming from it, so I did not think it was that important to follow through with it.
And just going back, I'm going to hand you what's been marked as Petitioner's Exhibit 3. Can you describe what that is?
So this is just some of the text messages from me and Jacob. Mr. Siller had included his own sets of text messages. The only thing is he has 2 phone numbers. I have both of his phone numbers saved under the same contact. As you can see, the blue and green bubbles, those are 2 different phone numbers. Mr. Siller included all of the blue messages in his documents, but failed to include the other ones, where he tries to paint as we had a great relationship, but fails to include the time that he told me that all of my stuff was thrown in the trash and I would have good luck fishing it out because I didn't immediately bring him his blanket.
And are you referring to the exhibits filed by Respondent, the text messages that were filed by Respondent?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, we asked, I'm all done with my questions for Ms. Sunvik, but I'd asked to admit the call log is Respondent's Exhibit 1, the video of the dash cam, which was submitted into evidence as Exhibit 2, and then this text message conversation as Petitioner's Exhibit 3.
So Ms. Mysak as to those requests for admission.
I just want to clarify that these are the ones that were already given to me, the call log and the other two, Mr. Drury.
Those are the
The
same
court
exact
Okay.
documents.
So the only things I see in the court file.
Okay, then no objection.
Okay, so those will be the petitioner's call log is 1, the damages video is petitioner's Exhibit 2, the petitioner Exhibit 3 becomes continues to be petitioner's Exhibit 3 admitted now. Right. And so any cross-examination, Ms. Mysak?
Yes, Your Honor, very briefly. Miss Sunvik, I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly. I'm sorry. You had mentioned that Jacob is in more of a supervisory role, right?
Yes.
Or was, I guess was. So the two of you had to kind of keep your relationship a secret, otherwise he would get in trouble. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. And you, partially because of that, pretty much only hung out at where he lives, right?
Well, that was because I live with my father and I don't like bringing other people to my dad's house.
Okay. But generally, to hang out, you would go over to his house, right?
Yes.
Okay. And when you would go over to hang out to his house, or his apartment, you would text him when you got there so that he let you in, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Your Honor, I'm looking at Respondent's Exhibit number 1. Is that what you were doing in these text messages when it says walking up?
Yes.
Okay. And these are dated throughout the month of September, correct? Until
Yes.
September 21st. Okay.
So let me slow you down there, Ms. Mysak, so I know what I'm looking at. I don't have
That's okay.
anything labeled Exhibit 1. I have respondents exhibits, and then I have the declarations and supplemental declaration. So when I've got a lot of screenshots of text messaging, is that what you're referring to?
Yes, I had listed Respondent's Exhibit number 1 in the upper left-hand corner, but it might not look like that for you.
But I do see it. No,
Okay.
thanks. I do see it. Thanks for
Okay.
pointing that out. All right, go ahead.
No worries. So you continued to visit his apartment throughout the month of September, correct?
Yes.
And after the month of September, correct?
Yes.
September was the month that you stated that first choking incident happened. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Looking at Respondent's Exhibit number 2, these happened beginning of November. You told him that you loved him on November 3rd. Also on November 3rd, that you're coming over and that you're walking up, again, a sign that you're over at his house, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now looking at Respondent's Exhibit number 3, can you, where it says chess, these are games that you can play, correct? And they kind of bounce back and forth between each player?
Yes.
Okay, so you had been playing games with Mr. Siller on November 4th, and it looks like on November 6th as well.
Yes.
And you had went over to his house on November 5th, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And again, on Respondent's Exhibit number 4, this is dated November 10th. looks like you are in Lakewood, and he kind of says, well, he has to wake up early, so you'll just have to hang out another time. Is that correct?
Yes.
But you responded, why? As an indication that you would have preferred to hang out on November 10th, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And looking at Respondent's Exhibit number 5, this one's a little bit blurrier, but I believe it says November 12th. But right above that says walking up. So you had visited Mr. Siller either on November 12th or probably 11th or something a little before then, correct?
Yes.
And you had played games with him on November 12th.
Yes.
So when you would go over to his house, you would see his brother there, correct?
Yes.
Okay. His brother lives with him, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So it's safe to say that up until November 14th, you continued to visit Mr. Siller at his apartment, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm looking at Respondent's Exhibit number 6. Respondent's Exhibit 6, excuse me. This was Monday, November 14th, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and this is the day that the relationship ended, right?
Yes.
Okay. He states to bring him his blanket, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then the next day on November 15th, he states, message me when you're here. I'll set your stuff outside for you, or you can bring it down if you'd prefer that. I love you. I'm really sorry we couldn't work this out. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, so it's fair to say that Mr. Siller was kind of the one to cut off this relationship. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. And then it looks like a little bit later, maybe an hour or so after, Mr. Siller states on the same day of November 15th that you can keep that blanket, that was a gift for you, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if we look at Respondent's Exhibit number 7, this is on another platform, correct? Than the last one?
No, it is on the same.
It looks like, oh, you're right. But at the very bottom, it states this contact has been blocked. This typically happens when one person blocks another person's contact, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But despite the breakup, do you two continue kind of playing games back and forth?
No. We played games in the early day of November 14th, but after the breakup, we did not play any more games after that. I had blocked him.
Okay. But these being Mr. Siller's screenshots, it's fair to say that you were blocked as well, because I had gotten them from him, but that's what it looks like down at the bottom where it says this contact is blocked, correct?
Yes, but that can also show up when it can be there. He could have blocked me the day he took the screenshots, and then it would show up. On mine, I don't get that notification on my iMessage. It does not say that. I'll get an option to unblock if I look at it a different way, but it doesn't pop up on the message bar.
Correct. I just wanted to know if that's what that meant down there. Now
Yes.
I'm looking at Respondent's Exhibit number 8. He states, can you please come get your stuff? I don't want to throw it away. And then you state, can we please just talk about this? So is it fair that he wanted this relationship to end and you maybe did not as much?
It definitely went back and forth. This relationship should have ended months and months before this day. I was very much just stuck in this abusive relationship. I didn't know how to get out of it. I didn't understand how to
Miss
live
Sanders,
outside of it.
I'm sorry to cut you off. Just when he sent this message, when you said, can we please just talk about this? At that time, when he sent that, you possibly wanted to keep this relationship going.
I wanted to talk to him about it because he was not
Okay.
having a stable conversation with me about it when we were breaking up.
Okay, but you wanted to talk, and he was letting you know, no, I'm done. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. And I just want to reiterate, you had submitted that call log where he shows that Jacob had called you a few too many times, correct? It's one of the
Yes.
things that you submitted. And I just want to reiterate that after that, or even a day after that, you hadn't heard from him since all of this had happened. Is that fair?
No, I did not hear from him.
Okay. You no longer work with Mr. Seller, correct?
Not after the order was placed.
Okay. He had left, correct?
He was given the option to transfer, I do believe, and he decided to quit.
Okay. Your Honor, I have no further questions for petitioner.
Any redirect, Mr. Drury?
Just briefly, yeah, I just want you to do as best you can with this answer, but you were asked a question regarding staying in the relationship, and you mentioned in a way, and I might not have quoted it exactly, but you didn't know how to get out of it or something to that effect. Can you explain that a little bit more at that point?
Yes. I am aware that, yes, Jacob would have been the one to get in trouble, being that he was the authority in our relationship given at work. But I was also nervous because I was also technically in the wrong being in the relationship. I was scared I would lose my job as well. With my workplace, I was also I didn't know how to leave it in general. He had threatened to kill me if I had left the relationship on multiple occasions. I felt scared and I didn't know what else to do. I felt kind of stuck for a few months. There was a few months I didn't want to be in the relationship anymore, but I just didn't know how to get out.
That's all I have, Your Honor. I would like to call Ariel, and I'm forgetting her last name now, Miss Thomas.
Thomas, okay. So we've got her in a breakout room. Ms. Thomas is in the breakout room, so we can allow her out now. Takes I don't know how long, 30, 40 seconds for it to come in. So we'll just pause. Okay. And Ms. Thomas, you can unmute and join the hearing. All right, so Mr. Drury is going to be asking you some questions, and then Ms. Mysack will be allowed to do so thereafter. And we've already put you under oath. So, Mr. Drury.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Miss Thomas, if you have difficulty hearing me, just let me know, okay?
Will do.
Thank you. Miss Thomas, do you know Jacob Siller?
I do.
How do you know him?
I used to work with him
And where is that?
at Harbor Freight Tools.
And do you know Miss Ashley Sundvik?
I do.
And how do you know her?
I also work with her.
And how did you work at Harbor Freight prior to Miss Sundvik?
Yes.
Okay. And how would you describe your relationship, if any relationship, with Jacob Siller?
I wouldn't say we were close friends, but we were friends at work. And I've known him for probably about a year or so.
Okay. And how would you describe your relationship with Ashley Sundvik?
We're friends at work.
Now, were you at any point made aware of allegations by Miss Sundvik that she was being assaulted or abused in a relationship?
I was.
Okay, and when about sorry, and about when was that?
That would have been around late September, early October timeframe.
And what were you told?
I was told of 3 separate instances where Mr. Siller had put his hands around her neck and choked her 3 separate times.
And who told you that?
Miss Sundvik.
Now are you aware that she eventually applied for a no contact order?
Yes.
And did you speak with her at all about domestic violence or about abuse in relationships?
I did. I actually encouraged her to get a restraining order.
Okay. And did she seem hesitant to do that, or how did she appear to take that advice?
She was very hesitant at first, yes.
Did she give you a reason?
She was in fear of losing her job and getting in trouble.
And do you recall the last day that you saw Mr. Siller and Miss Sundvik at work together?
I do. I don't remember the exact date, but it was sometime maybe mid-November.
Okay. Can you describe how they appeared to be around each other that day?
Miss Sundvik was very irritated at work. Mr. Siller was following her around, trying to make amends over a fight that they had. And she wasn't having it. She was just really upset and irritated. And she told him to leave her alone, and he then appeared to be very aggressive and hostile towards everybody in the workplace.
Okay. Did it appear to be like a playful thing at all, or that the two were?
No.
Did Miss Sundvik talk to you about that?
She did afterwards, yes.
And what was the substance of what she said?
She had told me that they had gotten into a fight the night prior, and that was the last time he had physically assaulted her. She was, at that point, she was just over it. She wanted to be done with the relationship. Like I said, I think he was trying to make amends and thought everything was going to go back to normal. It did not. She asked me what to do, and I said, you need to go file for a restraining order, a protection order. And once that's in place, then be done with it.
Thank you. That's all I have, Your Honor.
And is my sec any questions of Ms. Thomas?
Yes, Your Honor, just very briefly. Ms. Thomas, you stated you work with both Jacob and Ashley, correct? That's correct. When you stated that their relationship well, that you know that their relationship was more of a secret, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. But your friendships with both of them were both friendships that were at work, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So you've never really spent considerable time with both of them outside of work, right?
I've given Mr. Siller ride homes. That's the only time outside of work.
Okay. So you've never witnessed Mr. Siller choke Miss Sunvik, correct?
I've never witnessed anything, no.
You've never witnessed any abuse by Mr. Siller to Miss Sunvik, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And all of these accusations were told to you by Miss Sunvik, is that correct?
That is correct.
I have no further questions.
Any redirect, Mr. Drury?
Don't think so, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Drury, any objection to excusing Ms. Thomas?
To what, sorry?
Excusing Ms. Thomas, or would you like
No.
her to remain in a breakout room?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Mysak, any objection to the court excusing Ms. Thomas and allowing her to be on her way?
No objection.
Okay, so what that means, Ms. Thomas, is you can leave Zoom and leave this hearing altogether, or you can watch on YouTube. It's up to you. All right,
Okay.
but you're not expected to be called back to testify.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, back to you, Mr. Drury. Any other information for the court?
Your Honor, that's all I have.
Okay, Ms. Mysak, let me turn to you then. What would you like to do at this stage?
I have a few questions for Mr. Siller.
Okay, Mr. Siller, we've already put you under oath, and your attorney is going to be able to ask you some questions. Mr. Drury will be allowed to ask you questions as well. So Ms. Mysak, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll begin by letting the court know that Mr. Siller has uploaded a declaration and a supplemental declaration, so I'm not going to have him testify to what the court has already read, but just to highlight some of the few key points that I think are important. Jacob, can you describe to me how often the petitioner would come over to your place?
Yes, Ashley would come over, stay the night 3 to 4 nights a week, and she was probably hanging out 5 to 6 days a week over at my place.
Okay, tell me when this started and when this stopped.
We started dating about the end of summer, I want to say June, and we finished dating November 14th.
Okay, and describe to me whether you had any indication that Miss Sunvik was unhappy in the relationship or that anything had happened that indicated to you that she didn't want to come over anymore.
I had nothing. We had a pretty solid relationship from my point of view. We went out on a bunch of dates. She came over, stayed the night on a regular. We had a bunch of stuff over here that was like her clothes, basically a good night over the night bag. But it seemed all right to me.
Okay. So describe to the court why you had broken up with Miss Sunvik. Now that went.
Ashley and I, we had our minor hiccups, but one of the things I'd consistently bring up to her is she was pretty bad with like name calling and also what she thought was playful hitting. I didn't think was playful hitting. Ariel had witnessed this before at work where she had like kicked carts into my legs, stomped on my feet, little things like that she thought was playful, but mostly it was just bickering is why we ended.
Okay, and then tell the court, I guess, how you had broken up with her.
We had come to my place arguing. She had been calling me every name in the books, insulting everything about me. When we got here, a little bit more arguing. My brother was here at the time. We broke up and I walked her down, let her go home.
Okay. And how long after this breakup were you served with a temporary protection order?
I don't remember the exact date. It was a few days after that.
Okay, about 2 to 3 days, would you say?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you surprised to see this temporary protection order? And if so, tell the court why.
I was absolutely surprised. Again, Ashley and I had a pretty solid relationship. We hung out all the time. Seemed like things were good. Seemed like things were good at work. This was also dropped at me when I was in the middle of my work shift, so I got sent home. Um, yeah, pretty much super surprising.
Okay. And again, just to reiterate, is there anybody that you two had spent time with outside of work besides really your brother?
No, we didn't spend time with anybody. We knew that her older sister was my direct manager, so we knew that I would be the one to get in trouble if anybody knew we were dating.
Okay. And your brother had provided a declaration to the court, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Since the breakup, what steps have you taken to distance yourself from the petitioner?
So since the 16th, which is the last night I had any contact with her, I blocked her on all social media platforms. I've changed jobs. I now work in Centralia. I've done everything I can to stay away outside of moving out away from the state.
Okay. Tell the court whether you desire to stay away from Miss Sunvik, whether there is not a protection order. Do you have any desire to be around Miss Sunvik?
No, I do not.
Okay. Your Honor, I do not have any further questions.
Mr. Drury, any questions of Mr. Siller?
Just briefly, Your Honor. Mr. Siller, you described this breakup on the 14th as just kind of this sort of uneventful situation where you guys broke up and you said you let her go to her car. You walked her out at that time. Is that right?
Correct.
Right. And then that same day, that's the day of this uneventful sort of normal breakup, and then you go ahead and call her about 40 times the same day. Is that correct?
Correct.
You were told multiple times during that to stop calling. Is that correct?
Yes.
But you kept calling.
Yes.
You also submitted some text messages. Did you review the text messages you submitted as part of the evidence?
I don't understand what you're asking.
Did you review the text messages you submitted as part of the evidence?
I submitted everything that I had, every single message to my attorney.
Okay.
On all platforms.
On the November 15th messages you submitted on, it looks like Exhibit 6, they start, "Come over, you're being stupid, you better bring my blanket." Ms. Sunvik mentions you will get it tomorrow. Prior to that, you omitted the text message where you said, "Your stuff is in the trash, good luck fishing it out." Do you remember sending that text message?
I did send that text message.
You did not submit that as part of your text message discovery?
I submitted every single message that Ashley and I had exchanged, whether it was on my iPhone or the work phone number I have.
But not that text message?
Again, I submitted every single message from all platforms.
Your Honor, can I make a record?
And what would
I
that
don't want the
record be?
court to be misled. I think Mr. Drury and Mr. Siller are talking about two different things. Mr. Siller, Mr. Drury is referring to the text messages that Mr. Siller and I had submitted together to the court. Mr. Siller and I had gone over additional text messages that was submitted to me. I don't want Mr. Drury to lead the court to believe that Mr. Siller himself had submitted these text messages when counsel did.
I figured that. And I was wondering, Mr. Drury, maybe to be more specific, are you referring to petitioner's exhibit number 3 in part of this questioning?
Yes, Your Honor, we submitted petitioner's exhibit number 3, and then just in comparing that to respondent's exhibit number 6,
Okay.
we were noticing the difference there, that it appeared that text message, as I followed the stream of text messages, that particular text message was missing. So the conversation that was submitted was not complete. So that was my point. But counsel's right. I'm not sure if it's Mr. Siller giving the text messages to his attorney and then his attorney filing it. And obviously, I'm sure the attorney filed the text messages. Can I continue is the court clear, or does the court need?
Yeah, I'm more clear. Thank you. And when you're referring to, just try and throw out an exhibit number or where you want me to look.
Sure.
Make
I
it clear.
think I failed to
Thanks.
mention petitioner's exhibit 3 on that. Mr. Siller, did you contact my client on or about the 16th of November and indicate to her that you were in a mental health institution?
I did. So the night of the 16th, I drank in a little bit, and I'd walked myself to a behavioral hospital just because Ashley and I had a very good relationship. I don't really got anybody to talk to, so I need somebody.
Did you ask her to come pick you up at that time?
I did.
Okay. And did you then, I guess, get counseling there or help or?
Yeah, didn't seem too helpful to me, but they did what they could. They gave me a listening ear. That was enough.
I'm sorry, they gave you a.
They just heard me out. Really, is all it was.
Gotcha. No, that's all I have.
Any redirect, Ms. Mysette?
Yes, briefly. Jacob, in looking at the call log and looking at the messages that Mr. Drury is referring to when you had called her and when you had stated that you were in a mental health facility, you're not denying that those things exist, correct?
Not at all.
Are you seeing them in a different light now than you did during that day, though?
I don't think at the time the way I called her was okay, but once this protection order was dropped on me, I understood exactly what was going on. I've done everything I can to stay away. Don't want any more contact.
It's fair to say that those messages happened on the night of a breakup and that you were emotional, but you have a clear head now. Is that fair?
That is fair.
Okay. Mr. Siller, do you need a protection order in order to stay away from Ms. Sunvik?
I don't think so. I don't understand. What do you mean by that? Like one on her?
I'm asking, can you stay away from Ms. Sunvik without the court granting a protection order?
100%.
Okay.
I work in a different city. I resigned from my position. Again, outside of moving outside of the state, there's not much more I could do to stay away.
Okay. Your Honor, I don't have any further questions.
So, my second, any other information or evidence to present to the court?
Nothing further for respondent.
Okay, and then just Mr. Drury, any rebuttal of any kind, any other information to support your petition?
No, Your Honor, just closing statements if we can.
Okay, all right. So we'll move on to that. Mr. Drury, I'll hear from you, and then Ms. Mysek, I'll hear from you. And Mr. Drury, go ahead.
Your Honor. Well, the court heard from, obviously, in writing from my client through the petition as well as through her testimony and sort of corroborative testimony in Ms. Ariel Thomas. My client described a multitude of different incidences, a few involving strangulation or blockage of an airway, which are very serious matters and punishable at law if that were to happen, as very serious matters. My client described in one particular incident losing feeling in her extremities, feeling like she was about to black out. And when she described these incidents, she also described a headlock or some type of like an arm bar on her from Mr. Siller during arguments, and as well as threats, intimidation. We see the call log, and I understand that may be around a breakup. So, passions are high or emotions are high at that point. But that's pretty out of the ordinary for that to occur, like in that situation. But more to the point, and I understand that these are denied by Mr. Siller, but she's able to go back and identify specific incidences, going to fairs, dates, things that were said during these incidences. And most importantly, I think she spoke to somebody, Ms. Thomas, about this at work about a month and a half prior to ever filing anything, and disclosed these incidents to her friends at work. While that is obviously, a statement from my client to another, the fact that Ms. Thomas was able to reiterate that these things were told to her long before my client ever filed, and my client sat on it. And there's some cross-examination, it can be typical in these matters for a person like my client that did not come right out and just leave the relationship. Why wouldn't she do that? Well, that is also not a very unique situation where somebody is suffering from this type of abuse or from this type of serious domestic violence, to not go to the cops right away, to try to stick out the relationship, to try to act like things are normal within the relationship when they are very much not normal. It was after a conversation she had with Ms. Thomas that she finally realized that she needed to end this thing and go file for protection. I understand, Mr. Siller may be able to stay away without a protection order, but that's not really the test or the relevant inquiry here for the court today. The question is whether my client suffered abuse or domestic violence and needs a protection order, and whether or not with those threats to kill, my client felt that they were true and that they were going to happen, threats of violence. My client did. She testified to all that, and she feels she very much needs protection to go on with her life, to be protected by this court. This is a young lady that's suffered some pretty serious events here. And I think we've established enough corroborative evidence to show through her testimony, through her friend's testimony, through the written material that was provided to require a protection order here, Your Honor. We'd ask the court to grant one.
Hey, Ms. Maisa?
Thank you, Your Honor. Counsel and petitioner mentioned a few different instances. One of them, choking, where the petitioner states that she lost feeling in her arm and her leg. Seems pretty severe. I'm a little confused as to why there wouldn't be a mark. If that were true, I understand that marks don't always appear, but that seems to be a pretty severe instance of choking. She additionally mentioned that she was put into a headlock, that there were threats made, intimidations made. We don't have any proof of that. None. We have text messages, and in any of those text messages, I don't see any proof of any threats made. The only threat that I see possibly could be putting her stuff in the trash, which I think that we can all equate to tensions running high. There was just a breakup. We heard from Ms. Thomas, who worked with both parties. She had a working relationship with them only. She never hung out really with either party other than maybe giving Mr. Siller a ride home outside of work. She never witnessed them in a non-professional setting. Really, a better witness is Isaac Siller, who had provided a declaration to this court. That's Mr. Siller's brother. He lives with Jacob, and as the court can tell through the text messages, the petitioner spent considerable time at the respondent's house. If all of these things were going on, the choking, the headlock, the threats, the intimidation, I'm not sure why petitioner had continued. Respondent wasn't going over to petitioner's house. Petitioner was going over to respondent's house and requesting to be let up into his apartment. And that happened for months throughout September, October, and November until they broke up, and even before then from September. Your Honor, there was also a threat to kick in the door. We don't have any proof of that. In where the petitioner had stated that the respondent had called her too many times, Mr. Siller isn't denying that. He knows that tensions were high. They just had broken up, and he was going through a phase. I think the court can understand that. And since then, there hasn't been any contact. He has gotten a new job. He's in a whole nother city. He hasn't called her. He hasn't texted her. Not only has Ms. Sundvik blocked him, he has blocked her. He has made a conscious decision to stay away, and he does not need an order of protection in order to do that. I think the message was very clear when he was served with that paperwork. And, you know, some of these things, Your Honor, there really aren't exact dates on, which is why I'm calling into question the validity. I know, like, the chokehold was mentioned. Ms. Sundvik doesn't remember the exact date. You know, I don't really even have a month for that. I think the text messages are clear in that Mr. Siller had been the one to break up with him. Although the relationship, they may have argued, it's clear in some of the text messages that Ms. Sundvik did not want to break up. And very clear, very soon after they broke up, he was served with a protection order, not during the relationship. After he had broken up with her, they had a disagreement over text messages, and she didn't like the disagreement. And so now Mr. Siller has to sit with us here today. So, Your Honor, in looking at the statute, I am asking the court not to find that petitioner had met their burden and deny the petition.
And any rebuttal, Mr. Drury?
Just briefly, I guess. I mean, number one, Ms. Sundvik and Ms. Thompson's testimony is evidence, and that can be used by the court, obviously, as proof of abuse. So there is proof here. Sure, we have somebody that's in a domestic violence relationship that can't provide text message proof of this abuse. I don't see too many cases where abusers write out their abuse in text messaging and forward that, other than some harassment cases where there might be some threats. This happened in conversations, as it usually does. This happened in a relationship during intimate times, when only my client and her abuser were there. My client was intimidated. This is not a unique situation. She testified, I think, about looking at her testimony about the things she could recall in those certain situations, the things that were said to her. And the fact that she reported this a month and a half, 2 months before she ever came forward to another individual, I don't see defense alleging some type of, you know, that creation from my client. Why would she hold on to this that long? Why would she create it back then? And if she was lying and then bring it out now, 2 months later, that doesn't make any sense. We've put forward a situation where she was counseled by a friend and finally had enough at her young age to come forward and finally put an end to this. And there's enough corroborative evidence here to substantiate what occurred. the video of her dashboard that was beat in by the defendant, the dates with the text messages, things like that. The way Miss Thompson described that last day of work between my client and Mr. Siller. Mr. Siller described in his declarations the last day of work that was fanciful. Everything was fine. They were playful again. That is not the last day of work that Ms. Thompson described, where he was basically lurking around my client, following him around and being inappropriate with her at work, and that she was highly annoyed. The balance of the evidence suggests that domestic violence occurred here. I think we've met our burden. And again, it's my client that needs this order, regardless of whether Mr. Siller needs it. My client needs it for her protection.
Let me just pause here before I make a ruling. Review a few things here. Back at, excuse me, just looking back at 7105. I was re-reviewing, given the recent changes. All right, so Mr. Siller, Ms. Sundbeck, then at this stage, the court is issuing an order under RCW 7105 and under the domestic violence laws. And I kind of map out what my reasoning is here. I've heard obviously a lot of testimony and read a lot of good information supplied by the parties here. I find there's credible testimony presented through the petitioner, through her witness, of previous assaults in a relationship, threats within a relationship, malicious mischief or damage to personal property in a relationship that qualifies as acts of domestic violence against Ms. Sudbig by Mr. Siller. And in weighing all this evidence, I've heard credible testimony from Mr. Siller and reviewed his declaration. I'm not putting a whole lot of weight into Isaac's declaration, but am taking it into consideration, certainly because he lived in this household. However, for both Ms. Thomas and the brother, Isaac, there's question, I think, from all of us as to what they observed and what they heard instead. And there's that familial relationship that may undercut some of the motive there. Whereas Ms. Thomas, I find a bit more credible in that simply a coworker, not personally involved with either of these parties. Her testimony as to what she saw on I think it was around November 14th at work, and her testimony of what she heard from the petitioner, because she isn't, there wasn't any testimony, any information, any evidence that would undercut and give any bias as to why she would tell untruths or trying to get Mr. Siller in trouble or try to make him lose his job, or somehow that would undercut credible testimony and show bias. Now that the temporary restraining order worked is good. And that's what we expect to go forward. Mr. Siller, is that you follow court orders, and you don't have a history of not doing that. And I'm glad that worked. But again, that your willingness is not really what the court takes into consideration when trying to determine whether an order should issue under SW 7105. Was there domestic violence? I find there's sufficient evidence, credible evidence presented that you did commit acts of domestic violence against Ms. Sundvig during that relationship, and that there's a preponderance of the evidence of that, and a preponderance of the evidence that this order is needed to prevent any further and to protect Ms. Sundvig. So I'm going to make this for 1 year from today, January 9th of 2024. And it will expire on its own unless there's some motion from either party for the court to take it up and consider it either to terminate it or to modify it, or in advance of its expiration to renew it. But there are burdens that need to be shown by the petitioner and evidence to be taken from both sides again, should there need to be a renewal. And it's not just renewed by a judge signing it up again. There's another hearing had and then a full set of information taken and consideration weighed. So give me a moment to, I don't intend that this order be any different than the temporary order. So I'm pulling that up here. As to that, Mr. Drury, anything to say?
Sorry, if I could just review the petition real briefly, see if there's
I'm
anything
going to add the
requested.
same as my SAC, so take the time to look at things.
Looks like my client asked for 1 year, which the court ordered. It doesn't look like there's a firearms ownership as far as we're aware of, but she does show some indications of fear of him acquiring firearms. And she does ask for an evaluation for mental health. I would say there's been some testimony about that and some corroborative evidence regarding, I understand that a breakup can be very emotional, but when we're calling
Are you
somebody,
asking for changes from the temporary order in any way? What do you, maybe you can, if there are changes, maybe you
I'm
can give me that
asking
as a
for-
headline and take it from there.
oh, I'm sorry. No real changes from that. I mean, she asked for 1 year, but I believe she is asking for some either mental health evaluation, Your Honor.
All right, so that's what you're asking, that we change from the temporary order. So Ms. Mysak?
Your Honor, Mr. Siller doesn't have any firearms, so whatever the court decides with that, we're okay with. You know, Your Honor, Mr. Stiller doesn't need a mental health evaluation. Did he go to the mental hospital that night? Yes, it was directly after a breakup when tensions were high. Been how much time since then? There hasn't been any incidents. I don't believe that the court needs to make him go do a mental health evaluation. I think a protection order is more than enough.
And I agree. And also I don't find there's a preponderance of the evidence that I should be ordering Mr. Siller into any kind of treatment. I'm simply going to sign off in this order that says, Mr. Siller, don't have any contact with Ms. Sundbeck. It looks like you've taken efforts already to make sure that that's not going to happen. Make sure she's out of your phone, out of your, don't have any surprise phone calls or surprise emails that you didn't anticipate. Don't contact her through social media, through family, through friends, in any way, through your work. And let me just pay attention to this order quickly so that I can, it's very right back here. So obviously, I'm ordering that you not commit any physical harm, bodily injury, assault, non-consensual sexual contact, or non-consensual sexual contact. Don't harass, threaten, or stalk Ms. Sundbeck. And as I said, don't attempt to contact her in any way, shape, or form. And stay away, 1,000 feet away from wherever you know she is, from her residence and her employment. Sure, this is mirroring what we talked about before. Yes,